I did not grow up as a Quaker. I grew up as a Pennsylvania Dutch Lutheran in a town, Kutztown, close to Philadelphia. But my family had all been in the military. Both my mother and father served in the military in World War II, and my father was very heavily traumatized by that. And through meeting a number of people, I guess in my teens, I started to think about what conscientious objection might be. During the time when the open housing movement was happening in Chicago, and we were building a Black Arts Center in South Chicago. And I met Bernard Lafayette and a number of other friends, Mary Wallace, and they were very supportive to me in this becoming a conscientious objector, but also in being able to understand a lot about racism, getting to hear and meet Martin Luther King and all of those folks, and being in those marches really solidified my courage in some ways. And I must say that most of the time I found that the women around me were the people who really were able to lead in this process of courage. I went to Earlham College, to their program in Japan with the Great Lakes College Association, where I became involved in BIHELEN, which was the peace organization, nonviolent peace organization in Japan. We were trying to close down the US bases that were sending bombers to Vietnam, and had some success at Tachikawa. And the Friends meeting there was also involved in this process. When I came back to the States, I met one of George Willoughby's children, who I became really close friends with, and we invited George Lakey out to Seattle to do nonviolence training while we were doing street speaking. And George invited me to leave graduate school, come back and be the last staff person for a Quaker Action Group, which became the grounds for starting Movement for a New Society in the Philadelphia Life Center. And we had, I had a particular Asia focus there, so I did a lot of travel for the Movement for a New Society, helping to people who wanted to do that work, organize centers in Japan and in other parts of the United States. And that has continued, even though the Movement for a New Society does not exist officially. That group of people, which Pamela was also part of, really found a way to think about doing peace work, supporting each other collectively. Having part-time jobs would allow us to do this work, and that continued. But I must say that one of the biggest influences for me was the development of relationships with individuals and following their leadings, and particularly around racism in this country and what I would say is imperialism, US imperialism internationally. George Lakey and I are really close friends. We've done a lot of work together. David Hartso and I have too, and other folks. Through these connections, these personal connections and commitments to different individuals, I feel we've been led over the years to expand our view of the world and to see peace and kind of anti-imperialism as a key to our understanding of Quakerism, of really being able to connect with the spirit across all barriers.
So my family had some land in central New York State, and when my parents died, my siblings and I were trying to think about what to do with it. And my sister, Lisa Lee, had deep connections, built deep connections with the folks of the Onondaga Nation who are not that far away. And we were really, really happy that she pursued an opportunity to get to know 3 Oneida women who were looking for a place where they could center their traditional practices. And we ended up returning 35 acres to those women in the Oneida Nation. And I think everybody in my family was just so glad to be able to make that decision about that land.
And then Lisa Lee invited us to join the two-row paddle.
It's a initiative that started with the Onondaga to commemorate the 300th anniversary of the first treaty with in New York with the natives
Dutch.
and the Dutch. And so there was a 2-week paddle down the Hudson River in 2013. Yeah, so we got connected with a group of Haudenosaunee who are now in southern Ontario, and they replicated the paddle down the Hudson, their own paddle down the Grand River into the Erie, and we participated in that paddle several times. Again, building connections, building relationships, learning about what the damage that needs to be undone and the connections that need to be built before there can be real peace among people and with the earth. One frame that you could think about is the commons.
Mm-hmm.
And just a little backstory. My friend that I introduced to Friends Peace Teams, she told me, Pamela, you must write a statement of conscience. I thought, okay.
It's Nadine Hoover.
I thought that I mean, if you're a Quaker and you're writing a statement of conscience, it has to be about war, right? But when I started writing, it turned out that it was about the economy and the oppression and of the current economic system. And just I've spent a lot of time. That's been more of my life's work in the last several decades than piecework. And the idea of the commons, I think, is an extremely powerful one. And protecting what we have in common and reclaiming what's been taken from the commons. And that can be land and air and knowledge and cyberspace and seeds. And, you know, it's a very flexible concept. I think that at heart, that whenever we can do anything that names the commons, cherishes the commons, protects the commons, works within the commons, that's part of what's going to be a through line for us. And relationships, I think, are part of that. I was just thinking about this young woman who lives on one of the central islands in Indonesia, a Muslim woman in a very conservative Muslim culture that I've gotten to know through Friends Peace Teams, and that she and I are in touch. And so there's that's a different kind of a commons that we have that we can cherish. And we get to do that. We get to cherish the commons.
There are lots of things to be scared about in the current situation, but we've also been separated a lot from each other, particularly because of COVID in the last years. And connection is probably, and building connection internationally is huge. That, in my mind, a lot of the most interesting ideas about having a humane kind of society that we would want are coming from other countries. So I love Friends Peace Team's work. I've been recently teaching a class for Friends Peace Teams in Indonesia and the Philippines, a trauma healing class based on our experiences with understanding how to become co-counselors with each other. And it's been very powerful for them and for me to be able to do that together with the technology we have now. And we've only met ever one time together, here, but we can continue that. And it's very hopeful to all of us. It's hopeful to us here, knowing that there are other people out there that have a picture of what the world could be like if we're together. And it's hopeful to them to have the experiences that we've had in the past and have in the present, and the tools we have about trauma healing. So I think there's a lot of both intergenerational work that can be done. I mean, we've never retired. We are very active in the present. And I think that that's possible for all of us. And it's not the direction that the society would point people, but it's a direction that friends can, through their work with each other and their spiritual reflections and their decision that we're always learners.
I would add one thing so there's the commons, there's the relationships, and also this thing about knowing. We've kind of put such an emphasis in our culture on knowing things and knowing facts and understanding things and having progressions and data and this and that. And the reality is that we just don't know. We don't know. And I think that if we could claim that as a really good thing and look to the things that we don't know, I think maybe the things that we don't know are the ones that are the most hopeful. But we have to be open to them and not assume that the things we know are the whole picture. Mm-hmm. And I guess I would just say one other thing, which is that we get to find joy in our current lives. And I love the earth. I love growing things. I love creating beauty. And we can do that, we can do that. We don't have to stop doing that. That's in our futures as well.
One of the things in the current period that I find that because people have been really scared in this time period is that a lot of the young people are forgotten. And working with really young people and having connection with young people who are not only hopeful, but they see, the flowers that we walk past is a really important thing. And a lot of us need to go back and look at that time when we were young and we're hopeful, but have a connection with young people. So this afternoon, I'm actually going to be part of a parents and young people's group for children who were born under COVID, who have been very disconnected from each other. And I love going there. They love being there. And we usually, that grandparents, parents, and allies can come together and remember something that's very real about connection that we've gotten separated from. So I think there's a way that the intergenerational work, the work on racism in this period of time, and seeing ourselves as a collective group of human beings under God's guidance, that going forward can make a huge difference and does make a huge difference.